you should see a message saying it's live streaming on YouTube, just to let you know that this is not a public live stream, it's private. So it will only be sent out to those registered for the replay. So I hope you're all well. Do let me know how you're doing today. Good to see some of you that have been before and some new faces as well. So welcome. Glad to have you here. And I'm presuming that if you're on, you're going through a divorce or you're thinking about a divorce. And if that's the case, you're in the right place. I will be telling you a bit more about me so that you'll get an idea of who I am. But yes, I do this every week at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, and I share information about divorce, different subjects about divorce. So welcome. It would be great to know where you're up to in your divorce journey. Again, it just helps me to talk through things when I'm presenting, and I can make sure it fits your situation or refer back to you as well. So if you can, put it in the chat box. You can put it to me privately if you would like. You don't need to sort of share things publicly if you would prefer. While I'm talking, feel free to ask me questions, to interact with me in the chat box, and I will come to your questions usually at the end, but it's always good to get some interaction going so that I can see what's resonating with you and what isn't. So do let me know what your thoughts are as I'm going through. For some of you that haven't been before, just to let you know how this works, I talk for, I hope the rest of you can hear me. I know that one of you is saying you can't hear me. Do let me know in the chat box if you can hear me. I talk for 45 minutes. Well, actually, I talk for about 30 minutes and then I answer questions. Sometimes I do get very passionate about what I'm talking about and I go a bit over the 30 minutes. So, but we hope to finish in about 45 minutes to 50 minutes. So I hope that works for you. I usually come to questions at the end because then I can turn off the recording and answer your questions in private. So I hope that makes sense. And I will get started. So the lady who can't hear me, you might need to check your volume or come out of the meeting and come back in and see if that works, because I know that others can. And one of you has shared that you're separated, still living in the same house. Okay. So today's subject is an interesting one because today we're talking about negotiation. And strictly, this isn't sort of a legal topic about divorce. And that's why I find what I do really interesting, because from my point of view, it's good to share things that necessarily won't be something that you need from a lawyer. This is something that you need to know for yourself, because some of you will be negotiating yourself. Some of you will have a lawyer and you're still negotiating yourself, because the lawyer may write letters backwards and forwards, but actually there'll be a lot of conversations via text, email, verbal conversations around trying to get to an agreement. And I'll share a bit more about that when I start the different steps that I'm going to take you through. Let me introduce myself to those of you that are new here. My name is Bhavna Radia. I was a family lawyer until I gave up my practicing certificate recently. And I'll tell you a little bit about why that is. I got married a long time ago in 1999, so quite some time ago. And at the time, I was a practicing lawyer and I'd been practicing for quite a few years already. And I kind of felt like I knew what the pitfalls were and that divorce would never happen to me. We went on to have 3 wonderful daughters. And I must say the marriage was tricky. It was challenging. I had my head in the sand a lot of the times. for 15 years, I didn't really want to deal with the fact that my marriage wasn't what I thought it would be. And I carried on for years not wanting to make that decision. It's such a difficult decision. And some of you will understand that. You may have agonized over this decision for months, years even, like I did, because even though I knew things weren't great, I couldn't bring myself to end the marriage. I thought about everything else besides my happiness. I thought about the effect it would have on the children. I thought about the effect on finances, what people would say, whether I would ever be happy again, whether I'd be alone forever, would I make ends meet? All sorts of things came to my mind, and it stopped me constantly until one day I realized that I couldn't get away from this, whether it was now, whether it was in a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time even, I would be facing the same situation. And so therefore I may as well take it on now, while I still had the energy, and get things started. So I started my divorce. I separated 12 and a half years ago. My little one was 1 year old at the time, and it was a really awful time of my life. And you will understand this if you're going through this already, or even if you're separated and still living in the same house. You will understand how difficult it is once you've told the other person that it's over. My mental health plummeted. The children, especially my eldest, struggled. And life was so tricky for about 3-4 years until we came out on the other side. And when I did come out on the other side, I had been through quite a lot. I'd had court proceedings. I'd been homeless with the children for a while, and we'd managed to buy a property and settle in. And then after that, what I found was that I was working full-time back as a lawyer, working in an office, and I physically couldn't manage a full-time job with very, very young children, because my employer would get quite upset when I needed to take days off. And so I set up my own business because I believed that there was a better way to help people going through this. I realized that divorce separation is not just about legal advice. It's not just a legal process. There's so many more things involved. And I realized this because I knew the legal stuff, and I still struggled. I still needed someone to talk to, and I still needed to get support. And so I now offer services that are very different to the way I worked as a lawyer, and at a fixed fee, which I think is a really important thing to stop you worrying about legal fees. So I'm going to stop talking about myself now, and I'm going to talk about negotiation, because negotiation is really important. During this process, there's so many agreements that you need to get to, that you need to learn how to negotiate. It may be small things. It may be really big things that are going to affect your life. But whatever they are, negotiation is a process. And understanding how to do this can be the difference between getting a settlement that is right for you, that is going to make sure that you are covered going forward, is going to take your short, medium, and long-term needs into account. The difference between that and getting a settlement that isn't so great. So that's why today's topic is really important. And it's not legal, but it is something you need to know, because success lies in this, this skill set. And I know that for my clients, they have successfully negotiated settlements that have been great for them, and I've been happy with the settlements. And that has come from their negotiation skills. And hopefully some guidance from me as well. And you know, the first step here is, what is negotiation? Why am I even talking about this? And actually, negotiation is a process of communication which is aimed at reaching an agreement. When it comes to divorce, you and your spouse may have different opinions on how to share assets. You might have different opinions on how time is shared with children, how much maintenance is paid, who lives in the family home. All sorts of different things need to be agreed. And this is a process of communication. We work out how to address those differences and work towards a resolution that could be a win-win for both of you. You might find that during this time, there are some things that are instantly agreed, And there were certain things when I went through my divorce that were instantly agreed, like who were the kids going to live with? It was just accepted that they would live with me. Although it made it difficult for me to work, my ex-husband just didn't want for them to live with him. And we agreed that they would live with me. And that was just accepted, agreed, and that wasn't a problem. Then there's certain points that aren't agreed. And these points need to be negotiated. So some of the benefits of negotiation is that your financial settlement is going to have massive implications on you. So negotiating it correctly will help you. Being able to negotiate can have an effect on your emotions and stress, because divorce is emotionally draining, and you will know that already. Reaching an agreement, if you can, will help you reduce stress and anxiety. Obviously, not everybody has the option of even communicating with their ex-partner. Not everyone can be in a position to negotiate, because it might be their ex-partner is not giving them the information they need to negotiate. But if you have the information, if you are able to communicate yourself or via a third party, then it can really help you reduce stress and anxiety by getting to agreements. If you've got children, negotiation is even more important, because when you are able to negotiate and reach an agreement, then obviously this has less effect on your children, where you are continually arguing, trying to get things sorted out, not coming to the end, possibly going through toxic court proceedings. Then obviously the children are affected by this as well. There's time and cost savings. If you can get to an agreement, you won't need to go to court. Going to court is sometimes not that effective. You don't necessarily get justice, but also it's really stressful, long, and costly. By getting to that agreement, you're going to keep your costs down, and you are going to reduce stress, and you can put emotional energy then into healing, into moving your life forward, which obviously has a more positive impact on you. So what are the steps to good negotiation? That's the next thing. I'm going to talk about 5 different steps to negotiating well. And I'm going to start with step number 1. And I talk about this actually quite a lot during my talks, is understanding your priorities. How do you negotiate when you don't actually know what your overarching priority is in this divorce process? So initially, understanding your goals and priorities will help you know where you are going. This gives you a roadmap. This gives you a vision for where you are going, for your future. So what can these priorities be? You might not understand, what types of priorities I'm talking about. And I'll give you some examples. One could be maintaining a close relationship with your children. For example, if you're the parent that isn't living with the children, you're the non-resident parent, you may say your priority is to make sure you have good quality contact with the children and you maintain that close relationship. And if that's the case, then you might have to live close to the children, live close to the school, change your working patterns so that you're able to be more flexible, for example. So, all this will have an impact on your end goal. It might be that you want to keep the family home, or it's better for you to keep the family home for various reasons. That could be a priority because your mortgage capacity isn't so high. It may be that it's the only place that you can afford near the children's school. It might be for health reasons you have to stay in the family home. Or that is your wish. Emotionally, that's what you need. So that might be your priority. It might be that you want a fair share of the marital assets. And if that's the case, then it may be that disclosure will be really important, so we know how to get to that fair share. And we know that there is that possibility of going to court if the other person is not being reasonable and fair. You might say that your priority is living near your support network, so near your family and friends. And that might mean that you have to move out slightly. And so therefore your settlement could be based on that. Some people say to me that being at peace is the most important thing to them. They don't want to fight too much. They don't want to make this costly. They don't want to fight at the expense of their mental health and their children's mental health. And obviously that gives me an idea of what this roadmap could look like. Some people would say a divorce that is quick and not expensive is their priority. So what are your priorities? While you are here and while I'm talking, it's a good idea to note down 4 or 5 points that are really important to you. This helps you set a tone during your divorce. So if your priority is to have a good co-parenting relationship, then we make sure the tone of your communication fits that. Because if you get aggressive, if you are constantly arguing, if you can't keep your tone and what you are saying sort of directed towards this priority, then things can go wrong. And you can change the tone later on depending on how the other person is being. Some things will be non-negotiable for you. It's important to know what they are. Certain things that you just will not compromise on. Having a list of this when you go into a negotiation is really important because it can feel a bit pressurized. So knowing that you have thought about this and the children living with you is a non-negotiable. That's what you want, and that's something you will not compromise on. You might be worried about safety of your children when they're with your ex-spouse. And if that's the case, it may be something that you can't negotiate on. Contact has to be supervised. So think about what your non-negotiables are. And think about what aspects of your agreement you may be willing to negotiate on as well. So once you've identified your goals and priorities, the things that you'll negotiate on and the things you definitely won't, then it's sometimes good to communicate them with your ex-spouse because they get an idea of where you're coming from, what you hope to achieve, depending on what your priorities are. Obviously, if you want a good co-parenting relationship, it's always good to let the other person know. And I've got a question here. Can my priority be having the same lifestyle as now, not having to change my life? And that can be a priority. And that is one of the factors we look at when we're looking at finances. But sometimes it's not possible because where at the moment you've got that lifestyle with possibly 2 incomes, 2 adults in the household, later on you may have 1 income, 1 adult in the household, and the same lifestyle, and it's whether it's actually possible. But it can be a priority, yes, if the numbers work. Oh, jumping, I'm giving you 3 before I've given you 2. Step 2, preparation, and this is really important. It's something that I take my clients through a lot because with preparation, you will get clarity, and with clarity, you drop fear. With clarity, you go into things feeling confident, and especially in negotiation. When you have done the preparation, you have got clarity, then you are able to go into this, into court proceedings, into mediation, with absolute confidence because you know you are ready for that. And preparation can mean lots of different things. Well, the first thing is gathering necessary information about your finances, assets, liabilities or debts, income, not just for you, but also with the other person as well. Without this level of information, it's really difficult to be clear about what you're negotiating for. So if obviously we're talking about finances mostly here, how do you know what your share of the assets should be if we don't know what there is? But when we're looking at this, we're looking at the value of all your assets. So everything that you have in your name, in the other person's name, in joint names, in this country and abroad. Assets include the family home, investment properties, savings, ISAs, shares, pensions, cars, but any sort of share options, anything like that. But basically anything that's valued at more than £500. So think about how you can prepare, how you can gather this information. if you are looking at negotiation around finances. If you're looking at negotiation around children, then there are some factors that tell us what we need to take into account when we are making plans for our children. So it's always a good idea to go through those factors and say, where am I on that list? And actually, I have a book, which I'll talk about a bit later. And in that book, I give you worksheets to do this work. You prepare, you think about the factors for your finances and what could be a fair settlement. And for children, you think about these factors and you think about how you fit within them to get an idea of how your child arrangements plan should be negotiated as well. So moving on to step 3, you've now done the preparation. And part of that preparation, which I didn't mention, was deciding what it is that you are going to accept. So what I do with my clients, once we've got all the information together, we then move on to what proposals could we come up with? And I usually come up with 3 or 4 proposals, maybe more, that could be possible for that client. And then we work through which one of them they like. And it may be that if they want to keep the family home, we start with that proposal because I know that's their priority. And we base it on them keeping the family home. And we think about where the other person will live, etc. And once we've done that proposal, I also come up with other proposals. Because when you've got 3 or 4 proposals, you can see how it all works and you can make the best decisions. I've had clients who've said, I want to keep the family home. And once we've done the numbers, they've looked at that and said, actually, I could afford a better property in a closer area to my children's school. Or actually, I can't afford the family home. So I'd rather let the other person have it or sell it. So this sort of work that gives you clarity, really important to do. But when you have got this proposal that is the right proposal for you, we need to make sure that you have thought about the benefits of that proposal, the disadvantages, why it is fair, what the other person might say about it so that you're ready to come up with any solution to whatever they say about this proposal. But assuming you've done all that preparation work, and it's quite a lot to do at that stage, you're now at this point where you're starting to communicate. You're starting to talk about your proposal, whether it's about finances, whether it's about children. And communicating effectively is really key when we're negotiating. You have to learn to listen carefully to what the other person is saying, because that will give you clues about possibly what they might settle at. It will give you clues about what their mindset is, where the blocks might come in. You have to express yourself clearly and respectfully, because as soon as we start going down the road of being disrespectful to each other, this ends up just being a big argument, very toxic and not very constructive. So even if the other person is being a little bit disrespectful, you can make sure you're not, but you don't let them overstep your boundaries as well. Try to avoid any blaming or attacking or getting defensive, because you want to make sure this discussion is constructive. Sometimes we get into this situation where we want to be right. We don't want the other person to blame us for the past, but actually none of that really matters when you're negotiating. What matters is that we are forward thinking. We are moving this to a conclusion. So if they say anything about the past, you cut that down and you look forward, because for you, you want to get this done in the easiest way possible. And if you don't do that, if you're not able to get to an agreement, then you could end up in court. And at that point, this could take 2 years and you could incur, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds worth of costs, which we don't want you to do. So really learning how to think forward rather than go into blame or the past is really important. Try to think collaboratively. And what I mean by that is think about, with a solution that you're putting forward, try and think about the benefits to the other person. And if you communicate the benefits to the other person, then they will feel like you're thinking about them. And everybody wants their voice heard. their needs considered. And that's why when the other person is talking, it's also important to say, I hear you. I understand. I get that this is important to you. So they feel heard and they don't have to keep repeating themselves on those points. Think about solutions that work for both of you. Some solutions, you know that your ex-partner is going to hate because maybe they don't end up with housing. Maybe they're forced to live with their parents, whereas you get to live in the family home. And that might work. But if there are solutions that work for both of you that you are happy with, then those solutions might be good options. Think about alternative perspectives. There are sometimes options that you may not have thought of that your ex-partner puts to you. Don't write them off completely, but you can say, I need some time to think about that. I didn't think of that option. Let me go away and just work on that and I'll come back to you. Because some people, even your ex-partner, will have options that are actually really interesting. So we have to keep our minds open. Acknowledge each other's concerns and try to find that common ground. So finding out why they're not happy with the proposal. So if they say, I don't agree to that, you could ask, what is it about that option that I gave you that you really don't like? And it may be something like, I really don't like that you're keeping these shares. And it might be that there's something that could happen on that point, or that you're keeping that car when that car was our car. Like, who knows what it is. But that one small thing could be a blocker, but you could resolve that one small thing rather than when they just say, no, that's not working for me. You just accept that. Always good to try and be curious and work out what it is. But really importantly, when you are communicating, is manage your emotions, because I know that you're going through a lot. I know this is emotional roller coaster, but try and manage your own emotions so that what you can do is not get angry, not get defensive, not get overwhelmed. And if you are feeling like that's coming, take a break, go for a quick walk, go away and take some deep breaths, center yourself again and come back when you're feeling a bit calmer. Because if you're feeling inflammatory or aggressive or angry, then that can escalate things and derail the negotiation. Obviously, if the other person is getting angry and you feel unsafe, or they're saying nasty things that could really affect you, that are a bit out of line, then obviously think about whether you want to continue the negotiation at all. You might say, this is pushing my boundaries. This isn't right. You don't get to speak to me this way. And it's okay for you to stop there and come back another time, because that person also needs to understand that they can't treat you badly. So although I say to you, don't get angry and defensive and don't treat the other person badly during the negotiation, that doesn't mean that they can do it to you either. So that's a little bit about communication. And obviously I can only, because of time, I have to limit the nuggets that I give you. But I'm hoping that there is some things there that are helping you. Step 4, be flexible. Negotiation is about compromise. You might not be able to get everything you want. So I was working with a client, and she negotiates professionally for a living. But when it came to her own negotiation, she did struggle a little bit because her emotions kept getting involved. And we had a lower limit and an upper limit. She couldn't go above that upper limit in the negotiation. But when we started off at our lower limit, as soon as he said no, she was just wanted to jump to that top limit. And I said, no, just take it up slightly, compromise a little, because as soon as you give a little, they're going to want a bit more. So we have to compromise. We know there's going to be going up and down, and you have to be flexible a little bit, knowing what your top line is. You can't be flexible at that point. But there will be an element of compromise. It may not be on a lump sum. It may be on, if I agree to your proposal, can you let me have 2 weeks to move out of the family home? Or can I take my grandmother's wardrobe, or whatever it is? There'll be compromise along the way. So think about what your lower limit is and what your upper limit is on all different aspects. So you're really clear about where you can compromise. There'll be certain things that maybe were important to you, but actually because you're getting the bigger picture, you might not be bothered about some things just to get this over the line. Be open to different ideas and approaches, because there may be a really good solution that the other person puts to you. And you might just say, no, that on the surface doesn't look right. But actually, when you look at it in more detail, it might be a great idea. Be creative with these ideas. There's lots of ways to structure this so that if the other person says something, we can restructure slightly to make sure that that objection is overcome. And so sometimes just creativeness can really change this. So be creative about what you could do. Think about what you could agree that could meet both your needs and the needs of your children. So, for example, you might be worried about housing. You might think, where are we all going to live? And you might think, I can't decide what happens to the family home, nor can the other person. And it might be that one person desperately wants to stay in the family home, and the other person says, well, how are we going to afford everything? I'd rather sell it. So, for example, person one says, I want to stay there. The other person says, yeah, okay, but how am I going to buy a house? Where am I going to live? What happens to me? Do I have to live with my mum forever? Do I have to rent? That's not good. I want to buy as well. And it might be that the mortgage on the family home can't be transferred into the person that wants to keep it into their name until their income's increased. So there's this question mark about how you can release the other person from the mortgage or raise more money. And it might be that you say that live with your mum for 2 years. In 2 years' time, the mortgage can go into my name. I'll get some extra funds and I'll pay you a certain amount of money. So you've also got a deposit on that new property. So there is options of things you could do. You have to explore it. You need to decide what everyone's needs are, what they're worried about, and be flexible. So negotiation is definitely a process. It's not just a one day we've negotiated. Negotiation can take 6 months. It's little steps. And sometimes what you might need to do is negotiate on one small point, just the family home maybe, just where the children are going to live, or who they're going to live with maybe, what school are they going to go. Try not to do the whole thing in one go. Do small parts as you go. Finally, get professional help, because generally most people need to get some help from somebody during a divorce. And what I found, especially when I was negotiating my own, I wasn't the best person, because I should have really gone to speak to another lawyer to get an idea of what I'm agreeing or what I'm thinking about. Is that me talking from emotions, or is that me being rational and sensible because I understand how to do this? And I have to admit that what I was doing for most of my negotiation is being emotional, talking about something like I wanted to keep the family home desperately. I couldn't see another option. I was so narrow-minded about that. If anyone mentioned anything else, I'd say, no, I want to keep the family home. The family home I couldn't afford with 3 young children. And I decided that I'd take 2 jobs to be able to afford it. So I would have worked, I don't know how many hours in my full-time job, plus the traveling, plus looking after the children and picking them up and putting them to bed. And then I would have worked nights on something else. And that's how I decided I was going to keep the family home. It's not sustainable, but I couldn't see it. And it took for actually a friend to talk to me about it. And I went through my numbers with my friend, and they said, look, this isn't possible. And actually, it wasn't the right thing to do either, bearing in mind our dynamics. So it took somebody else to tell me that this wasn't the right thing. And I couldn't get my head around it for ages. And if I'd spoken to a lawyer, maybe I would have come to that conclusion a lot quicker. So, and also I find my clients would do things from emotions. I have a client who, when she came to me, she said, I don't want anything. I'm going to leave the family home. I'm going to leave the children there, and I'm going to go off. And when we looked at it, it wasn't a fair settlement, obviously. But when we looked at it and I said to her, how are you going to survive? And I worked through the numbers and we looked at what was fair. She decided that, yes, she needed something and she wanted to have the children. So she decided to go for something that wasn't actually quite fair. I think it's much lower than what's fair, but she doesn't want to fight him. And once she understood what was fair, she came down a little bit because that made her feel better. And so getting that help helped to save so much. I mean, I think she's managed to, her negotiation right now could be £300,000 that she now has rather than nothing. So I'm glad that I was there to pick her up and make sure she understood. And we put a vision to her life going forward. Otherwise, she would have been in a place where she would have given up everything and she didn't think about her life going forward properly. So getting professional help could be that you talk constructively with somebody who's able to help you get to an agreement. You could get somebody like me who can work with you to work out what your assets are, what your liabilities are, what goes in the matrimonial pot, what are the good options for you, what proposals are possible, what's the advantages, disadvantages, why should that be fair, what would a court think about it, and then how are we going to put this to the other person? How are you going to argue this and feel really confident? So somebody like me can help you with that and be there while you are negotiating. Obviously not physically in the room, but be there to discuss what happened, what counter offer did the other person make, how are we going to deal with that, to make sure you don't give away too much. And then obviously getting professional help around agreements on your children. Again, sometimes we're emotional and we might decide something, but if the other person takes us to court, that's legally not the right thing. So there's different ways of getting to this agreement with professional help. And obviously mediation might be one of them. Using somebody like me to help you could be another. And then there's obviously lawyers there as well that can do everything for you. But obviously that comes at a cost, 20, 30,000. It could be the cost for that each. The average cost of divorce in the UK is 18,000 each. So obviously there is a big difference when that happens. But I hope that that's helped. The important thing here is that you learn to reach agreements on small points, big points, on the whole settlement, how you're going to do this process. Be creative, find solutions, don't be scared of it, because it is a really good way of getting this done, getting things wrapped up, and being able to move on with your life, because you don't want to be sat in this place for years and years. You want to avoid court if you can, because that's where the lawyers earn their money. That's where they start being able to charge you big bills, and we don't want that. And obviously I provide something a little bit different, which I'll just go through for a few minutes. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box now and I'll come to them after this. What I offer is a 6-month fixed fee support and guidance program, where I am there supporting you, guiding you, not just on the legal process, on things like negotiation, on things like what is the best financial agreement, what's the best child arrangement for you, but obviously legally as well, how you make that legally binding, how you get through this process until we're complete and it's all finished. But part of the program is about you feeling confident, feeling financially empowered, and emotionally resilient as well. It's 6 months, as I mentioned. It's a fixed fee for the 6 months. I help you with correspondence, writing emails, letters, backwards and forwards. I help you with documents. I help you with the divorce application, help you with gathering financial information, coming up with proposals, negotiating. It's within a supported community, and I bring other experts along as well, like a financial advisor, a mindset coach as well. We had a parenting coach recently come to chat as well. The fixed fee is $2,500. You can pay it in one installment or 5 monthly installments, just to make it easier for you. If you need to, you can stay on longer on a month-to-month basis. Some people don't need to, and you can see the difference in the fee between myself and a lawyer. And it's a fixed fee, so you're not worrying as well. And you don't necessarily need a lawyer for any part of a divorce process. People think you do, but that's not necessarily the case. So it's just understanding that it's not compulsory to have a lawyer. But feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk about the program and work out if it is a good fit for you, because that's the important thing. We need to make sure it's the right thing for you. So feel free to book a call and chat to me about any questions you've got around the program, but also whether it's the right thing for you. I talked about my book, which gives you worksheets to do around finances and children, but also your own mindset. Because actually, if we can get your mindset right, if we can get you empowered and confident and clear, then you can come out of this getting the best outcome. So that's why under my divorce planner, it is saving money, which is really important, reducing your stress and getting you the best outcome. That's what we're working on. And actually, it's a book where you are starting to do things and taking action, not a book just to read. Feel free to contact me on different platforms. There's Facebook, Instagram, my website, and booking a call as well. And I know Yufi has put all the details there, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back into the room and see what you guys are saying. But before I do that, I'll stop